All our guests return to their seats at this time as we are about to get started.
Ohio University. Y'all having a good time for the Music Industry Summit? If you're having a good time, big round of applause. All right. Before I start, I just want to do a quick few thank yous. Big round of applause for Josh and the staff and the organizers. This has been an amazing time. Yeah, thank you guys. Amazing few days so far. So before I start, I just always want to do a quick roll call, see who is in the audience. So I'm gonna check in. Raise your hand if you're a student. It doesn't matter if you're a student here. Oh, a lot of students, okay. If you're an artist, songwriter, producer, DJ, creative, music professional. Any music professionals here? Okay. Music lover? Hopefully everybody. And then a quick, just kind of icebreaker. I want you guys for, quick 10 seconds, say hi to the person to your left and say hi to the person to your right. So introduce yourselves. Okay. Amazing. All right, so we're now acquainted. So I'm gonna kick it off. So we're excited for this conversation, building a fan community, cultivating connection. I'm Drew DeLeon. I'm one of the co-founders for a music and tech community called the Digilogue. I'm super excited to be here. We've been programmed for the past 9 years. We focus on various verticals from music careers, arts discovery, education, and community. And I'm excited to really moderate this panel. Without further ado, I'm gonna introduce it to Ariel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ariel Hyatt. For my entire adult life, I have been in service to independent musicians. I run Cyber PR out of New York City. We are half a music education company. I write books, blogs, I make videos, I teach classes, I travel over the world, and I love talking to creatives about the process. I also run a digital marketing and PR firm on the other time when I'm not writing and traveling. And I'm really honored to be here.
Thank you, Ariel. Semajah?
Hi, my name is Semajah Parker. I am an OU alum, graduated in 2021. Hey, Aspen, hey, sorry, say my Francie. I graduated in 2021 with a degree in music ed. Went to grad school, don't know why. And now I work at Sony Music as the audience development coordinator for Legacy Recordings, which is the catalog division of Sony, so.
Hello, I'm also an alum. My name is Jill Mapes. I graduated a little bit before you in 2010. And since then, I have been working in New York as a professional music journalist. I spent 8 years at Pitchfork as the features editor. And in October, I started with 4 of my other ex-Pitchfork folks, a website called Hearing Things that is worker-owned, subscriber-driven, music criticism, music discovery. We do newsletters, a podcast. We're starting to put on events. So I was telling these guys beforehand, I kind of jumped on this to fill in for Torres, who I want to say has I think she's really great to her like loyal fan base. She's really great online. I feel like I will not live up to Torres's insights, but I'm here and I'm glad to be here with you guys. So
Thank you, Julie. And your insights are going to be very important. So appreciate you for being here. But yeah, we're super excited. Now we just kind of start with the intros, but I think just to kind of frame the conversation, we're going to be talking about, one, understanding your fans. So that's something we're going to be talking through, how we create value for your fans, because that's one that I think a lot of artists always are trying to figure out. 2, how do we build community? I think, how do we get started? That's different for everybody. And then more importantly, how do we sustain community? Because once you get started is how do you maintain it? So let's get started, Semajah. For you, when you think about 2025, what's your perspective on what is an ideal fan, and what do you think fans care about in 2025?
I think an ideal fan is just somebody who loves music, loves to engage. I think in 2025, we are seeing a rise of labels and music companies really paying attention to what fans are doing and what they're engaging with, right? So it's not even just music, like Severance. I have not watched Severance, but all of my friends and people at work love Severance, and those are fans. There's so many things happening in subcultures. I just started How to Get Away with Murder, and I am a fan, and now I'm getting into learning about all of these ins and outs and kind of like deep diving in Reddit. So I think a fan is anybody who's willing to kind of like consume something, but also engage in the community in consuming that. And then the second part of your question was,
When you think about like what do fans care about in 2025?
I think community. I think fans care about being in community with one another, being in community with the people that they are engaging with, not necessarily just an artist, but that would be great, but like recognition from something. So fans want to feel seen, they want to feel like they're a part of something, and I think that's kind of like the basis for that.
Yeah, that's so important. I love that you mentioned Reddit, which is really a great hub for conversation. Always some interesting threads there, but I love Reddit.
Yeah.
How about you, Ariel? What are your thoughts?
I think when an artist is trying to figure out what is going on with the fans, the community, how do they make the community integrated, they have to first look at themselves. So many artists come to me and my agency and they haven't thought about, and you know, I hate the word branding, and everyone's a personal brand, and we're on Instagram, your brand, but brand is so much more than your colors and your fonts and maybe your outfit that you wear on stage. A brand is about your ethos. A brand is about your mental state. A brand is about how you wish to communicate. Are you snarky and short and trite, or are you political and a social justice warrior, or are you analytical and literary? These are all ways you can show up in your brand, and that has to be considered before you jump into like grasping at superfans or grasping at trends. And the other half of that brand conversation is not everybody is out there to be your fan. The problem with carrying around a little machine that connects us to 1 billion people in our back pocket every minute of every day is we've gotten into this desperation of, I just want so many people on TikTok to like me, or I just want the world to like me. Look at yourself, and normally when you turn the mirror out, that's your ideal fan. They're going to look something like you as an artist. They're going to have the same values. So even before we get into all of the audience building, understanding yourself and understanding who your audience is the first step of your journey. Of course, after having great music that you worked on, and the music is always the foundation. I hate when marketers jump into marketing before acknowledging art.
Yeah, I love the fact that you mentioned like a self-audit, because oftentimes we're just creating as creatives, as artists, we're just putting out music. Also just doing an audit of like, you know, who in my friend group, who in my community is listening to my music, investing in me. And I think you have a better understanding of how to talk to them, because you may have an idea of like who your fan is, but when you see who's going to your shows, you'll be surprised. You know, you never want to like, you know, oust anyone just because they don't necessarily look like you, but they might be passionate about your music. Jill, what are your thoughts just from like your experience and just kind of like your perspective where things are at in 2025?
Well, I want to echo what you were saying about like the creativity comes first, and anything you do to promote and connect with fans I don't think it can take away from the energy you need to do the creative part, to make the music. So like, you know, I don't think an ideal fan is somebody who needs like 12 TikToks to get into your thing. I think it really is about, like you were saying, paying attention to who is showing up, who is in community, who's at the shows, who's leaving comments, who's liking your stuff. And I think, you know, it's funny, I think Torres is particularly good at this on Instagram. Like, she knows that her crowd is more millennial than it is Gen Z. She's not like, she's a bigger, more interesting presence on Instagram than she is on TikTok, because I think she understands that more of her fan base is using Instagram as that home base rather than TikTok. So I think that, yes, you look at yourself and you look inward and you're like, my values are, and my music and my aesthetic are communicating these things that are calling people in. But I think too, it's, you can be strategic. You can say, I'm building a fan base on this platform, and this platform is not as important to me. And you kind of figure out what things cross over where, you know, where things work and where your people are. So, yeah, I think the ideal fan is like somebody who wants to engage with you, somebody who wants to comment or like or do something, but also like buy the record. You know, I think you can't go around chasing like the digital moment or the viral moment that you can't even plan, and like not cater to those hardcore people that are your day ones that are showing up at small shows, that are buying your tickets and buying your vinyl. So I always think like cater to your day ones. Like that's the most important thing, I think.
Yeah, I love that. And real quick, this is a quick exercise I think that you guys can do, just to like, you know, you talked about like kind of a self-audit, which I, you know, prescribe to our artist community is one, if there are 3 words to describe your music, you know, define that today. You know, what does that era of music sound like? You know, is it existential? Is it inspirational? Just something to think about as you're like listening to this conversation. I think 2, we talked about values. Like, what are the 3 values that you feel like your artist brand represents in your music? And then 3, you know, put together like a comp of artists, 3 artists that you feel like best represent your music. And I think that could be a good representation, whether it be an artist that's local, a mid-tier artist that you feel like you want to aspire to, and maybe like a top-tier artist that you want to essentially be on tour with. And I think those could be like good exercises as like an actionable item for this conversation. But yeah, we talked about, you know, where fandom is in 2025, and we talked about values. What do you think outside of music, and I'll start with you, Ariel, what do you think is important for fans to experience with artists beyond the music? I know we talk about live experiences and merch and all that, but what have you seen with some of the artists you've worked with?
So there's a new buzzword in the industry, which is not new at all, and it is superfans. And I want to die every time I hear this word because there have always been superfans. Since the first note of music that's ever been played, there were fans to be there and listen to it. So that is a thing. But when you are thinking about the experiences that you're creating, there is another reality check that I think we all need to think about, which is we are now in a post-pandemic world. Something traumatizing happened to all of us collectively, no matter what side of it you're on, 5 years ago, where our lives stopped and things changed. And what we are seeing on the other side of this is we did not all go back to business as usual in the music space or in any other space. Our lives changed. There's people working from home. There's people that don't like to go out as much. There's people being very choosy about their experiences. But one thing has never changed, and that is, as humans, we love to connect and we like experiences. And I hate referencing major tentpole moments, but there's something that I've been really thinking about because I'm writing a new book about this experience that you're supposed to be creating for your fans, and it's individual for every single artist. Some of you might invite all your fans out bowling on an off night. Some of you might decide that you don't want to play a dingy bar because that's not where your fans are going to show up, and you want to maybe do a house concert, or you want to do an outdoor festival, or you have to think about what your community is going to like, and you also have to keep in mind that people are no longer interested in the same way that we used to be 6 years ago. I can't think of anything I'd rather do less than show up at like a local club in New York City and stand there for 45 minutes. Like, I don't want to do that. I want to do other things that connect me to people in a different way. So when you're thinking about that, and this is again a unique journey for every single artist, is it Diplo who runs with his fans? Does anyone know this?
Like a run club, right?
The Run Club.
Yeah.
Diplo, he's one of the most famous DJs, arguably, on earth. He has a run club, and you can show up several times a year to his hometown and literally go running with him. That is so freaking cool. Like, and people do it. They fly from around the world and they join him. So like, what's your run club? What's your thing that's going to be really fun that you can do? I have a client who has a knitting circle. She's like creative
Dope.
with her hands, and like they go to this cool like makers cafe in Brooklyn once a month, and like a bunch of her fans show up, and some do collage and some are like making digital art, and they just hang out and they drink coffee. I have another artist who's sober and very proud in the sober community. He does sober cocktail events where like people are tasting cocktails and they move it around to different venues when he's on tour. So think about what your fans might enjoy and how you can connect with them. Because when you do that, my friend who does the crafting, 2 of the women that crafted with her got married last year because they met up and they were like enjoying crafting together. So you're creating something special for your community, and it's unique to every single person.
I love that. I love the run club, the crafting. There's really no limit. So as you're listening, think about what is your run club experience for your fans. So that's something to think about. How about you, Jill? I mean, just from your experience working with artists, are there any standout fan experiences that you feel like, oh, that was super different, super cool?
It's funny that you brought up the bowling thing because there's actually a band that had a bowling party, this band Water From Your Eyes, who were on Matador when they released their first album on the label like 2 or 3 years ago. They put together a small party for some fans and some journalists and people at their label Matador and some other people in the industry, but like fans, and they rented out half of this this bowling alley in Sunset Park in Brooklyn, which is quite down there, and it was a great time. And I think they got to know some people really intimately. And I guess to that point, like you were saying, like nothing is too small. Like Diplo has a run club. Like it's just like I think we have this idea, and this kind of goes along with the idea that we're living in a different world than we did pre-pandemic, where, and even during the pandemic, where like everything online could be personal. It could be somebody's main source of entertainment or lifeline to the arts. Like we are living in a world where I think people are getting back to those one-to-one experiences. They're getting back to something smaller. And I just, especially like younger emerging artists, you're trying to do your thing. Like scale is not the way. It is really to try to use your personality, your talents, and like these special interests like that we're talking about here to connect with people outside of just, hey, you like my music. And like, I don't know. I think sometimes there's this divide where artists think like at any level, like fans are fans. They're not going to be friends. They're like the people that support me. They're the people that like in the best case scenario, like, you know, pay my bills or whatever. But like, I think that those, you know, you have to have boundaries for what feels comfortable to you. Like, I'm not trying to be like, you know, what Chapel Roan says is true. Like, do not bother her, you know. But like, I think if you're a small artist, your fans can become your friends, and that's kind of the way to play it, you know, is just don't worry about having 100 people packing out a room. Worry about having 20 people that really fuck with you and like make sure they're gonna keep fucking with you. Yeah. Pardon my language.
And I love how you established that. And real quick, I think also creating these experiences don't have to be expensive. Yeah. You know, I mean, you can literally do like a quick coffee shop meetup with your fans, find your favorite coffee shop. As students, do fun things that like what is within your age group do you guys enjoy that you guys can do together? Yeah. Bowling, you mentioned things.
Gaming.
I mean, yeah. Fun stuff that doesn't feel like an expensive lift. So I think I just wanted to note that. And Semajah, for you, like working with legacy artists, how are you approaching like creating those fan experiences, especially for artists that already have core fan bases, but also establishing new fan bases for Gen Z and Gen Alpha?
Yeah, my team and the artist marketing at Legacy is really great. And I mean, a couple things, like you mentioned, a lot of things are like very artist facing, and what our team does, a lot of the times for their events, there's not going to be artist involvement, either because the artist has passed away, the artist has so much going on, or it's the cost of getting an artist involved will be a lot, which is as anything. And so one thing that, like when I started full-time at Legacy in September, and a couple months later, like I think it was like a month or two later, but Luther Vandross had a huge documentary that came out, and you should watch it if you haven't seen it. It's really great. But Luther Vandross is a staple in the music community, and a really cool event that was put on was at this skating rink in Brooklyn called Xanadu. And I was super excited because I haven't gone roller skating in so long. And I was honestly shocked because I did not expect, I think it was like a middle of the week, like a Wednesday or Tuesday. Did not expect so many people to come out, but it was such a cool event. It happened from like 7 to like midnight. People were still coming in at like 11 o'clock. It's like, I gotta go, I'm tired, I gotta work tomorrow, I gotta be here tomorrow. I can't be here all night. My boss was having a great time. And it was really cool seeing so many fans and so many people like engaging. And so like the more you can create those experiences as well, like Luther Vandross has passed away and he's not involved, right? But we're still creating community around such an iconic artist, Never Too Much. I don't know if I've played it more that day than I have in my entire life, but it's like reminding me of all the things that I love. And it was so cool seeing so many, like there was the DJ there and there was a singer there and then there was so many really great skaters. And another event that was recent, Backstreet Boys Millennium 2.0 is out and happening and they are going on tour. And so my team, the lead on that team and the lead for the Backstreet Boys, we hosted a coffee event at Gregory's Coffee in New York City and scaled it to kind of happen right after the Backstreet Boys were going to be on the Today Show. They didn't show up, but fans came directly from there. There's a small little recap. If you go to Popstruck on IG, you can see a little recap video from that day. But there was this really great fan. His name is Mike. He's like a big fan of the Backstreet Boys. And he was so great. And it was just so cool. He was like, thank you for putting this on. I love the Backstreet Boys. We gave out Backstreet Boys merch to the first 300 people that were there. They could get a larger than latte coffee. And so it was just like those are the things kind of on our side from the legacy standpoint. And even from like label side, I'm still very fresh into this full time. I was on the college team at Sony previously and kind of helped curate these experiences for college students, but seeing it there, like if you're like, that's kind of how you do it. You meet people where they are, and I think there's so many other things that have happened or will happen, but those are the kind of experiences like gauging fans and being there with them and seeing that. That's kind of how we've done it.
Yeah, I love that, especially for like legacy artists like the Backstreet Boys, Luther Vandross, classic artists. Mm-hmm. But yeah, some of the words that I think kind of like are the through line of this part of the conversation are experiences, value, being able to like create that for your fans, and nostalgia. Nostalgia is huge because we think about music, and when we listen to that first artist, that time and that first show, those were moments that you remember that you felt a certain way, and you want to evoke those feelings again, especially like where you are in your life. And I think those feelings are great. So nostalgia is a big one. I think that's super important. Something that now that we've talked about understanding your fans, I'd love to talk about where we start building community. There's a lot of tools out there, right? There's various platforms outside of socials, newsletters and different platforms. But Ariel, for you, like, where would you first start to build your community?
Okay, this is like the least sexy part, right? This is the anti-TikTok conversation right here. So there's two people or two organizations or nefarious things in China that should not be owning your communication to your fans. One is Mark Zuckerberg. Two is TikTok. These are not strategies. These are multi-billion-dollar conglomerates that do not care at all about your mental health or about the fall of democracy or about anything else. And so when artists come to me and I see that their entire strategy for fan connection and building has to do with putting all their eggs in those two baskets, I cry. The least sexy tool that you can have to establish who your fans are is a spreadsheet. Open up Google Docs, name, city and state, email address, phone number, how I know this person, social media links, and start with your number one, let's use it, super fan. Put them right there at the top. And if it's your mom, be proud of that. Go down the list. Go onto your social channels. Find that person that's constantly commenting. Do you know their name? Do you know where they live? Do you know what they like? Have you ever commented back? You'll make their day if you do. If you're not there yet, that's fine. Put your friends and family. They're your street team. Second tool, email. Again, super unsexy. It can be MailChimp, it could be Kit, it could be any of the tools that manage emails. But if you don't have an email list management tool in your toolbox, you are not caring about building an audience. If you're young and you don't think your community is on email yet, start a text messaging list. I can't tell you how many artists. I have artists that have been famous, world, global, touring artists. They come to me, no email list. 6 major label deals dropped, no email list. And I'm going, oh my God, like, what a horrible thing to have to do, to have to go back to the spreadsheet with a client that has Grammys. And it happens all the time. So don't be that. Start with that foundation.
Do you remember when shows used to be like if you saw a band and you were at the merch table, they would literally have an email list, sign up.
Clipboard.
Yeah.
And we've stopped doing the clipboard, and I want to say, like, we can go back to the clipboard. Like, it's totally cool to do that.
Or we can go to a QR code, which you can
Yes.
just get everywhere, and everyone's
Easier.
got their phone. You know, there's no reason. But yes, clipboard.
I think too, not to just jump in, but I think like you'll feel more fulfilled than being on TikTok hoping people will see it. Like having a show of any size and just being out there and telling everyone you know, maybe you make a party full invite so it's
Love that.
less annoying. So, well, it's more annoying for them, but it's easier for you to bug them and say, hey, like this really means a lot to me. Will you come out? And you have that email list and you start to build it. And, you know, I just think it's so small. It feels so small, but that's just how you do it, I think.
And I'm jumping into like a whole new side of what I'm learning. Like I'm very much a social girly, kind of where I built up my understanding of marketing. TikTok, I always tell people, if you're not using social media, you're kind of behind because it's a free tool. If you have a phone and an internet connection, you should be utilizing it, but you should not stop there, right? When you have social media, like you have like the TikTok, the Instagram, Discord is another one that's very great community building. There's Reddit threads as well, SMS channels, like first party data is very essential for so many artists. So the more you can have like some sort of say in your community and connecting with them, because there may be a time where you don't have access to these social platforms, right? There's also different generations of people. There are still people who click into email lists like it's their job that don't have any type of social media, and they signed up because they saw a QR code on a random TV screen or at a show, right? A big part of the work that my team does and my bosses and people, we are acquisition. Like, how do we acquire fans? How do we get fans to, you know, buy into artists, not just like buying product, but how do we keep them informed? So I think the more email is great. Like there's so many great companies out there who strategize in email marketing and acquisition through email and are really like, we work with some great people who get really into the weeds with how we can leverage email for our artists. And then, yeah, I'm a huge, in terms of social, obviously use social media, be intentional about it, but also find ways to transfer your fans and your community to other platforms, whether you're an artist or whether you're wanting to work with artists, whether you are, you know, wanting to work in the industry and be a huge CEO or whatever. You should always be able to have your community transferred to other places. There's paid things like Patreon where they can go in. There's like Substack is now a thing. Anywhere you can create buy-in outside of just the regular will be really great too.
Yeah, so many great tools and platforms. And I also love what you mentioned about some of the social media platforms that you spoke about. I mean, I'm just going to just take a consensus. Like, who the students here panicked a little bit when TikTok went down? You know, I'm sure...
Me.
So I think the reality is, and this is a hot take, but I think working digital for so long, you know, digital marketing and social media, for me, my perspective is I think it's rented real estate at the end of the day, because you're basically fighting against the algorithm and what you're prescribed to see and what content you supposedly are supposed to engage with. I think ultimately this year in 2025 is like, own your fan data, you know, own it. You know, to your point, creating a spreadsheet is like the first, quote unquote, CRM tool where you know, that can evolve into other platforms. I know you talked about a newsletter. You know, there's MailChimp, there's Beehive. There's a lot of platforms you can do. You talked about Discord, a community where you can congregate. You know, I love Twitch. You know, there's a lot of great artists, streaming creators that can like congregate there and support their communities. Another great tool, which I prescribed to artists, is Laylo, Laylo. You can collect numbers and emails. You know, let's say you're at a show, you know, put your number out there and people can text it, so you can text them directly. I mean, ultimately, the conversion rate for someone engaging with your content is really low, between 5 to 10%. But if they're gonna get a text or an email, it's definitely up in the range of like 40 to 60. So the math is in your favor. So I did want to mention that. But yeah, we talked about understanding your fans. We talked about starting and building community. And part of that too is, you know, as you build your community, maybe talk a little bit about like the expectations, because oftentimes I think artists get discouraged, like about the comparison, like, oh, you know, I only have 100 people on my email list. Semajah, for you, like when it comes to just like being able to hone in the fan and community building, why is it so important just to kind of like take that time until you hit a certain inflection point where it starts to really grow?
Take time for
building. Yeah, because there's always like challenges in the beginning, and then I think a lot of people get discouraged. They're not seeing the numbers that they want immediately.
Yeah, I think we, and I'm very much a victim to this, but like we live in a society where we want everything like this. I think with the rise of short form content, which is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Short form content is great for me because I have a very short attention span. But with the rise of short form content and short form things, people think that because you post one thing, you're automatically going to your fans are going to be there automatically, right? Just because you have a viral moment, it doesn't mean that you're going to be the next big thing, right? And because you have a viral moment, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have fans that subscribe to you immediately right away. But I think what you do is you show that there's buy-in, right? There's worth there. I think about some of my favorite artists that are smaller. One I love, her name's Hope Tala, and I've been a fan of her for a little bit, but I've seen kind of her community grow a little bit, and I posted a video that went like super viral about her from her song, and like she followed me. I'm like, girl, hey, like what's going on? But I'm kind of like seeing like her community grow a little bit now, and like that was like a couple years ago, and she just released her debut album in like February, and like there's more people coming. There's another artist I love. Her name's Maud Latour. I've been a fan of her since she like auditioned for The Voice and didn't get in. I'm one of those people like I knew her from the beginning. Maud Latour is on tour right now, and she auditioned for The Voice in like 2019, 2018, whatever, like super, super small songs like I was listening to when I lived in Jefferson Hall and listening to her songs, and that are no longer on DSPs because she removed them, but like seeing her go from there and like these small little communities building up to now I think she's signed with Warner and like a super, like she's still starting to grow and emerge, and I think just being consistent is the biggest thing. Like you're not going to see the numbers right away. From a fan perspective, this is me speaking. Like oh my goodness, me and my friends, we used to run fan accounts for an artist, and we were in the trenches for so long, and like we just want this artist to break through. We want this artist to break through, right? And we did that as middle schoolers for like 10 years. I'm so serious. Like I did this when I was like 14 years old. 10 years, there's artists, like one of my really good friends is Deep. Sabrina Carpenter OG was there before she was on Disney, like really deep there. She works at a label now, and Sabrina is huge, right? And she has kind of been in the weeds with that, right? So from a fan perspective, like we even know, like it's taking time. Like, and I think there's definitely been a huge shift, especially now with the pandemic. Like people are expecting things to happen like that. But I think the more you can understand that overnight success is not overnight, you should be encouraged to know that, because I think one thing people are losing is just development of artists. Like we see so many great artists kind of fall off because they don't know what to do with everything that they have, or they don't know how to develop. So yeah, it doesn't happen overnight. Is long story short.
Most definitely. How about you, Jill? Just from some of the artists you've either interviewed or worked with, how they've kind of like slowly cultivated their community in ways where like it may have taken like 5 years, but they're starting to really see the results.
Yeah, somebody who had the best year ever last year obviously was Charlie XCX, and I've been a fan since Nuclear Seasons like 14 years ago, and she's had her angels for longer than that, and she's been wanting to get to that apex of a big zeitgeist moment, and obviously Brat did that for her, and I was extremely happy to see that as a fan, and also just like a person in the industry who likes to see that hard work in a major label pop environment can also yield things. Like, you're not just like a flop because you didn't hit it on your first or second record, So like, I love to see that on a very large scale. Somebody that I think the best thing with artists, especially like an indie artist or somebody who's like, they're going to have maybe different waves of discovery, from like the tastemaker folks to the like maybe the indie labels, or like a little bit more middle ground, and then to like the mainstream. And somebody that I always think is like really delightful in that, when people like, there's been waves of discovery of like, oh, this person is great, and it's Adrienne Lenker, who does Big Thief, and Big Thief is obviously extremely popular, but I think her solo work is like even better. And I know she struggles with how much of herself to give away online and how much to talk about like on social platforms, and how to engage with people wanting to know about her personal life. But it's been really organic to me. I think she's made a lot of good choices with her team and the labels she signed with, and riding that organic wave that, on a tastemaker level, on a level of like, I was following her from the second Big Thief record onward. Like, it's amazing when an artist, like, every album kind of feels like a new discovery point or a new little breakthrough. And I think that's kind of what you want. Like, so that's somebody that I'm always like, she's not the most, like, she's not making TikTok, she's not making herself fully available, but it's just like that wave of discovery, whatever her team is doing, it just keeps kind of finding new audiences.
Yeah, I love that. And I think when it comes to milestones for you as an artist or you're a marketer for a fan, I think celebrate that with your fans. And I think, it could be like, for the first 100, we're going to do a Zoom, and I'm going to introduce myself to everybody type of thing. And I don't think there's nothing wrong with that, because they want to feel like they're part of the journey with you. And I think that's super important. Yeah. How about you, Ariel? So when it comes to some of the artists that you work with, some more of the independent artists, how are they, kind of progressing and kind of seeing, their progression as they like do build their community? Because, it's not necessarily 0 to 10, because they're not like on a label where like they're pumping dollars towards. Like, they have to really do the groundwork to do that.
So there's something that I've seen, and I had a front row seat to this last year in particular, where I spent many of my days feeling despair. And there's two things that artists have to dance between in our current music industry. And this is something, when you're building a community and a fan base and your brand, you need to be aware of. And I'm actually just writing a book about this, and I'm calling it Buzz and Bond. These are two separate mindsets, and they're two separate action items that you need to take as an artist with a career. Buzz is capturing moments on TikTok. Buzz is how many followers you have. Buzz is how many plays you get on Spotify. Buzz, unfortunately, if you don't really think it through and you're not super mindful, can be purchased for very little money online, like guaranteed followers. They're never organic. I don't care what the website says, bullshit. Another thing you have to be mindful of is, if a Spotify playlisting company is guaranteeing you X amount of plays, it's also likely a buzz proposition. And so many clients come to me and they have hundreds of thousands of followers on Spotify. It takes me exactly one click to see all of the fans for a US, New York City-based artist that does not have a global audience at all, and all of their fans are in Mexico City and Chile and Brazil, shows me that they paid a marketing company. That's buzz. Okay, everyone hires these companies. You can see it in all the superstars' accounts as well, but that can't stop there. Bond is where you need to focus. Bond is the community build. Bond is the heavy lift. Bond is not purchasable by finding a bot farm on the internet, and that's the hard, hard work. So what I see every day is artists leaning too heavily into the buzz and not focusing on the bond, because the bond cannot come. I'm a very smart marketer. I'm a very good strategist. I am a good thinking partner. We all are in the industry. That's why we get paid to do what we do. But we cannot do this for you, unfortunately. It always has to come. Even Luther Vandross, like someone in his family has to be making those calls about the estate and how it's going to be managed. There's lawyers, there's people Sony is answering to. They're not just making it all up and doing it. It doesn't matter how far you get up the food chain, you cannot acquiesce that power. So what I see is this sort of exhaustion from social media, because on a good day, 2 to 3% of all your fans are going to see your stuff without paying for boosting or ads. And so it's really focusing in there. And I love what you said about celebrate your wins. Celebrate the few fans that love you. Celebrate your people that are close to you. Because if you get tripped up in that dopamine hit of like the millions and the billions and the numbers, it can really take you out of your process as an artist, and it can get depressing really fast, but you can also get addicted to the dopamine, and that's the worst possible thing when you're building a community.
Yeah, I really love the fact that you mentioned Bond. I think for a lot of the artists and creatives and marketers in the room, like oftentimes, it's easy to just want to do things in New York and LA, but your hometown, whether it be Athens and then, working through the Ohio market, Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati, and other cities I haven't mentioned. But, being able to build that community regionally, I think is really important, and really collaborating with other artists so that you're leveraging your audiences in exchange for their audiences. And I think locally you could do that as like kind of like a swap of fans, and knowing that could be like the first step to building your fan base. Yeah. I think it's super important. So we talked about understanding your fans. We talked about creating value, starting community. And then I just want to just quickly wrap up in terms of sustaining community. So Semajah, I just want to talk about what are some of the things you're seeing in terms of gamifying the fan experience, because I feel like fans love polls. They love ways to win things. What's been your experience?
Yeah, I am a huge gamer. Personally, and gamifying as well, like creating things that are interactive. I think the more you can, it's tough because it does cost money, especially for small indie artists, but Twitch is a great platform, right? I love Twitch. My screen time is probably a little too high, but Twitch is a really great platform to just kind of get your face out there, right? And there's DJs that are on Twitch all the time kind of DJing. There's artists who are on Twitch playing video games. Like T-Pain is a kind of crazy good Fortnite player. Like, I'm actually shocked, and it makes me want to go listen to his music, because I'm like, I love T-Pain in general, but I'm like, wait, like, slay, So he's like really great. Like, so the more you can find ways to get into these spaces, literal gaming, Twitch is a great platform for that. But gamifying as well. SZA, when she released Lana, she had this little bug website and like created a website, and I think it's still there. Like you just click. It's like an ant, because her Lana is kind of like bug themed, and it's an ant, and you like click it, and like you can click to go to the different parts, so it leads you to her merch site and everything else. Like that's cool for me. I'm like, I spent probably like 5 or 6 minutes, like kind of just moving my little ant around the thing. So then there's a lot of free websites that you can use to create like cool little things. If you know how to code, like, and do pixel art, like I think a while ago Doja Cat did like a pixel art website or something like that, like a video game, and a lot of artists are kind of gamifying their websites. And so I think any way you can find something to make it like super, super unique to you, like if you like knitting, like there's probably some way to digitize that, right? And like you kind of knit your way through something. So do a lot of research, get on these platforms, kind of sit, but anything that you're really passionate about, I think it's super important to gamify, because I think that's just another avenue that you can utilize to create fans and reach people. So
I love that. Before we go into questions, Ariel or Jill, anything to add? Just like any cool ways as artists or creatives and marketers, just to sustain community building and fan retention?
I think we're all kind of echoing a similar point in some ways of like, you can't really fake it as far as like your interests. Like, we're talking about different interests you have outside of music or ways to bond or create connection with fans. Like, it has to be genuine. So don't be like, yeah, I'm going to join Twitch. I never play video games. Like, you got to show up at whatever your thing is, you know, and it, you know how it is. Like, you can tell when something's bullshit on the internet. So just go with your gut and be true to yourself. And I think that's really what you have to do. And I just think, like, get over your ego in a way. Like, it does not have to scale. Like, we had our first event for Hearing Things, the publication I run, and there was like 150 people that came out. We had so many meaningful conversations with subscribers. We got new subscribers. We had a raffle. We leaned on our community, and we were like, indie labels, will you donate vinyl for this raffle? And, I think we were talking too about if you're friends with another artist and you think their fans would like you, like, just lean on people. It never hurts to ask. It never hurts to be like, hey, do you want to do, this together? Or do you want to, there's a lot of things that you can do with just your community, but you do have to sort of like ask.
I mean, sorry to jump in, but like Julian Baker and Torres is an example of that. I love Julian Baker. Them doing a joint album really brought me into the Torres community. So that is another example, like, from a fan, like I've experienced. So yeah.
Yeah, your more successful friend, like, call in that favor. Like, yeah.
Hey.
Love that.
How you doing?
Great. As we wrap up, we have a few minutes for questions. So I'm gonna get started here. We got Cooper. What is the panel's view on artist-to-fan connection through interactive forms like video games, we talked about gamifying, and broader tools like the metaverse?
Oof. I can. Oh, go ahead. Okay. I yap. I'm sorry. I yap a lot. I yap a lot. I think that you said video games and they're the metaverse. I think metaverse is a bit inaccessible. I think the more you can make something accessible to your fans in gamifying, the easier and the better, because I'm all about making sure people can have access to things. So I think the gaming route is definitely a more accessible route, but I think it's very valuable because you do have fans that do have access to the metaverse type thing. So any way you can be innovative is great.
Ariel?
Years ago, when it was Second Life, hello, this is how old I am, I had a client named Hep Shepard who went all in on Second Life, and it worked. So there weren't a ton of fans there, but there were fans there, and he went to South by Southwest, and he had the coolest frickin' showcase I ever saw in my life in a wine cellar. Everyone else was getting beer spilled on them on 6th Street, and Hep Shepard was sitting up there with a $30 Chardonnay playing for this weird group of people from Second Life. So yes, I agree. The metaverse is not something that's here yet. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, we don't know. But if you're gonna lean into a super niche thing, be okay with the fact that you might only have 20 people sipping wine, and that's okay too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you mentioned those spaces, and then there's obviously platforms like Roblox, and especially
Love me a good Roblox server.
Yeah, just just great platforms where whether you're a gamer, that's where you congregate. So figure out ways. I know I've known artists to kind of create avatars and skins and all that. So. And for gaming, so that I think that's super cool. I think we have time for one more question. Let me see here. Let me see. What is your most embarrassing public or private Golden Fan moment? When did you fan out? All right.
Dang.
Semajah?
Okay,
You seem like you have an answer.
There's been so many. Oh, goodness. Well, this was on national television, so it was kind of crazy. I love Khalid down. Khalid that's my guy. That's one of my favorite artists ever. And so he was on the Today Shows. There's a lot of stuff happening in my life, but this day I happened to go to the Today Show was yapping to some producers, yada, yada, yada. Who's the biggest Khalid fan, yada, yada. The crowd was quiet. I said, make some noise, y'all, what the heck? And the guy, he looked at me, he said, are you a fan? I said, yes. So he asked me some questions, whatever. Wasn't expecting anything. Watching the show, literally Craig from like all the news anchors came out, and Craig from the Today Show came. Was like, there's a clip somewhere. It's like, where's Semajah? I said, everybody was like, she's right here. And so then they were asking me like, I heard you're a big Khalid fan, and like Khalid is like the artist who really inspired me to kind of start in the industry. Being a fan in his community is really what got me there. And it was really crazy because I'm like, hey, what's going on? So they're asking me these questions. Like, I heard you. It wasn't embarrassing. It was probably it was really weird because my face, I was like, I think the camera cut right before there. I was like really like hyperventilating. But then they kind of like, they're like, have you met Khalid? Da, da, da. I was like, kind of yes and no. He's like, oh, will you meet him? So he comes down. He's like, I know you. I said, I know you too, sir. And so it was really cool, but it was like really kind of crazy because now like all of my friends and family know like I'm a really big like super fan, Girk, but
The world knows.
yeah, the world knows.
amazing.
I'm like national
That's
television, dang, but that was kind of awkward, but it was fun.
Amazing.
I love that. I'm like, as journalists, you're sort of like, don't act like a fan, and like, don't ask for a photo, don't try to hug them. You're like doing a job. So it is very hard to crack that, but I interviewed Cher once, and that was really hard to maintain composure because she is just like an overall life icon, and kept my cool. And then afterwards, she was like, she literally said this, and I can't even believe it. She goes, great Cher interview. I was like, you're Cher. And then she was like, yeah, I'm going to give you 2 tips for life. Always wear black eyeliner and always do you. And then she was like, you want to come in the studio and listen to some of my music? And it wasn't good. It sounded like, mids Adele, but like, it was incredible. I was like, yes, I love it. I love it. And of course I don't, but that was a moment for me.
That's great stories. But round of applause for our guests. That's a great conversation. Thank you again to Ohio University Music Industry Summit. Some great panels after this. Make sure to connect with each other. More to come. So thank you guys for being part of this.